Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, you're not a soldier or a sailor, but a monk climbing the cold slopes of northern Japan, drawn to a life of silence, purity, and eternity. What begins in serenity will, step by step, lead you down a path few would dare to tread, a path where hunger hollows, poison scorches, and stone walls close in tighter than prayer. Before we begin your journey into that silence, do me one small favour. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. If you'd prefer these stories without ads, you can join the Patreon. It's linked in the description. And if you want the ultimate immersive experience, consider using a pair of wireless earbuds. They're comfortable, discreet, and designed so you can wear them even while sleeping. I've linked my favourite pair plus other sleep tools in the description. Now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. The path to the mountain is long, but not hostile. You follow the winding track upward, the world below growing faint with every step. Pines lean close as though to block the way, their trunks dark and their needles sharp with resin. The higher you climb, the thinner the air becomes, until your chest must rise and fall more deliberately. Stones crunch underfoot, each step sounding louder in the stillness of the slopes. The clamour of markets and villages lies far behind you now. In its place is a silence that feels older than memory, a silence that draws you onward as surely as any road. The mountain does not speak, but you feel its presence around you, vast and steady, and you begin to understand that it is not you who has sought it out, but it that has permitted you to come. The monastery does not announce itself in grandeur. It sits quiet against the mountainside, weathered timbers dark with age, its tiled roofs mottled with moss. The walls are plain, yet they radiate a sense of permanence, as though the earth itself had agreed to shelter men here. You bow as you enter, not because anyone commands you, but because the air itself seems to demand humility. A monk in simple robes greets you without expression. He asks no questions, makes no ceremony. With a gesture, he leads you through wooden gates into courtyards, washed with morning light. You pass beneath a bell that sways in the breeze, its tongue still. Yet you feel it vibrating in your chest all the same. Your days as a novice begin without fanfare. At dawn, you wake to the sound of chanting, low voices resonating in the hall, sutras spilling like a river whose source is hidden. You kneel among the monks, your voice uncertain at first, stumbling over syllables, but carried by the tide of theirs. The words are less important than the rhythm, the way they gather your restless thoughts and still them. After the chant, you walk out into misty gardens, dew soaking your sandals as you tend vegetables, sweep the stones, fetch water from the spring. The work is not for pride, not for wealth, not even for survival alone, but for discipline. Every task is a lesson in humility. And though your muscles ache, you begin to feel the strange quiet that comes from doing only what is needed. Meals are sparse but steady. A bowl of millet, a ladle of broth, a few strips of radish pulled from the earth you have just worked. At first you crave more, the fullness of rice, the rich taste of meat, the comfort of sweet fruit. But you learn to eat slowly, to be grateful, to let the hunger settle rather than fight against it. Around you, no one complains, and so you do not either. You sense that endurance is as much a part of the practice as prayer. Hunger sharpens your attention, makes every flavour more vivid. Even the bitterness of wild greens seems profound when eaten in silence. Evenings are given to meditation. You sit cross-legged in the dim glow of oil lamps, the hall heavy with incense, your breath shallow in the smoke. At first your legs ache, your back stiffens, your thoughts wander endlessly to the world below. The sound of laughter in the streets, the warmth of family, the comfort of beds. But the elders guide you with few words, telling you not to chase your thoughts, not to cling to them, but to let them drift. Slowly, you learn to let them go. The ache in your body remains, but it no longer owns you. Hours pass unnoticed, time dissolving into breath and silence. When the lamps are finally extinguished, you leave the hall with your mind quieter than when you entered, as though you yourself have thinned into smoke. The mountain itself becomes another teacher. You fetch water from streams that freeze in winter, their surfaces glassy and unyielding. You carry firewood along narrow paths slick with moss, each step deliberate to avoid slipping into ravines. Storms roll down suddenly from the peaks, smothering the monastery in fogs so dense that walls vanish at arm's length. On clear nights, the stars glare down, fierce and innumerable, and you feel your own smallness more acutely than ever. The mountain accepts no complaint, offers no comfort, but in its silence you begin to see the shape of endurance. It has stood for centuries, unmoved by weather or man, and by living in its shadow, you begin to take on some of its stillness. As months pass, your ties to the world you left behind begin to fray. The memory of warm meals and busy streets grows dim, as though you had dreamed them. The names of familiar voices fade from your lips, their faces blurring in your mind's eye. What replaces them is not loneliness, but absorption. You become part of the rhythm of the temple, the sweep of brooms, the rise of sutras, the stillness of meditation. The absence of the past is filled by the presence of repetition, and in that repetition, you begin to sense something larger than yourself. The elders watch quietly. They do not praise, nor do they chastise. Their silence is instruction enough. When you falter, when your body groans beneath the discipline, they do not lift you up, but neither do they let you fall. Their presence is steady, immovable, like stones that endure season after season. You realize that what they demand is not brilliance, not speed, but persistence, the willingness to walk forward even when each step feels impossible. Gradually, you are invited deeper into the rituals. You bow before the shrine, incense curling like breath toward unseen heavens. You copy sutras by hand, brush steady, each stroke a lesson in patience. You join longer chants, your voice no longer stumbling but woven into the collective. In every gesture, no matter how small, you sense the same lesson repeated. Strip away what is unnecessary, polish what is true. Life here is not about accumulation, but subtraction. Yet beneath the calm there is an unspoken weight. You see it in the eyes of the elders when they pause in meditation, when they look toward the mountain's hidden slopes where stone chambers lie. They speak sparingly of it, but you sense a further path beyond this one, a path not only of silence in life, but of silence that endures beyond death. You are not ready to ask, and they are not ready to tell, but the knowledge hovers at the edge of every prayer. For now, you focus on what is before you, the vows that will strip away comfort, that will test whether your devotion is true. At last, the day comes when you kneel before the elders, your head bowed low to the floor. Months of labour and silence have carried you here, and now you are called not merely to live as one of them, but to renounce more than the ordinary world. You kneel on the temple floor, forehead pressed against the worn wood, and when you rise it is into the silence of the elders' gaze. They do not need to explain the meaning of what comes next. You have lived among them long enough to know that the monastery's simplicity was never meant to be its final austerity. What you have endured until now, the small bowls of millet, the cold air at night, the slow rhythm of ritual, has been but a preparation. To walk further, you must strip away the last traces of indulgence that remain, not only those you once knew in the world below, but even those permitted within these walls. What is asked of you now is not merely discipline, but renunciation. You bow again, your voice steady as you give the vow. Farewell to rice, farewell to meat, farewell to warmth and comfort. You pledge to live on what the mountain itself provides, to abandon even the thin veil of softness that has sheltered you until now. The first days of this vow are filled with a strange clarity. When the meagre bowl of rice is withheld, when your portion is reduced to coarser grains or wild roots, your body feels suddenly light. Hunger sharpens the senses, making the sutras resonate more clearly in your chest, making the incense more pungent in your nose. When the blanket is taken from your bed, the cold night air seeps into your bones. But you find that wakefulness has its own strange purity. Your mind, no longer dulled by comfort, hovers in a space between fatigue and alertness. What once seemed deprivation now feels like revelation. Each absence becomes a teacher, each ache a reminder that you're shedding more than flesh. You're shedding illusion. Chanting takes on a new quality in this state. The hunger that twists your belly sharpens the edge of your voice, gives it a rawness that carries through the hall. You hear the elders' voices, steady and low beside you, unbroken by weakness, and you measure yourself against their constancy. The repetition of the sutras no longer feels like monotony, but like a carving tool, etching discipline into the hollow spaces your renunciation has opened. With each bow, each breath, you feel yourself lighter, as though the body is no longer anchored by food or warmth, but lifted by devotion alone. Yet the body does not give itself over without protest. The hollow ache in your stomach deepens each day, throbbing like a drum through your ribs. You wake in the night shivering, your limbs stiff, the straw mat pressing, unyielding against your bones. Muscles that once carried water jars easily now burn with effort. The simple act of sweeping a courtyard leaves your arms trembling, your breath shallow. The absence of rice, the absence of meat, the absence of even the thinnest blanket. Each of these absences is a weight pressing down, heavier than any stone. But the vow does not bend. The elders do not soften. The cold air is your blanket now. Hunger is your companion. Weakness is your reminder. There are moments when you catch yourself longing for what you once dismissed as ordinary. The memory of a steaming bowl of rice, of salted fish shared in a village tavern, of the warmth of a fire after rain. These images rise unbidden, cruel in their vividness, but you learn to let them pass, to treat them as drifting clouds that obscure but do not change the sky. The vow you have taken is not to indulge memory, but to endure its sharpness until even longing is stripped away. Each time the ache of hunger pierces you, you remind yourself that the ache is proof that you're moving closer to a life, not bound by the flesh. As days stretch into weeks, the renunciations become a rhythm rather than an interruption. You wake with hunger, you sleep with cold, and in between, you work and pray with a body pared down to its simplest function. The chanting no longer falters on a dry throat, but grows steadier, as if the lack of food has cleared the weight that once muffled your voice. Your steps through the monastery courtyards may be slower, but they are also more deliberate, as though each one is made with intention. Even the simplest tasks, like drawing water from the spring, take on a sacred quality because they demand effort without complaint. The monks around you do not praise you for this endurance, nor do they console you in your weakness. Their silence is its own form of recognition. When you stagger under the weight of a bundle of wood, they do not rush to relieve you. They let you bear it until your legs learn to steady themselves. When you cough in the cold air of dawn, they do not press warm tea into your hands. They let the chill teach you that the body does not rule the spirit. In their stillness, you see the truth of what you're becoming. Someone who does not ask for ease, someone who does not flinch from hardship, someone who lets deprivation carve devotion into the bones. You begin to notice how austerity reshapes not only the body, but the mind. Where once your thoughts were restless, distracted by longing or memory, Now they are narrowed to the simplest concerns: the sound of the sutra, the sweep of the broom, the rise and fall of breath in meditation. Hunger sharpens your focus. Cold steadies your resolve. The stripping away of indulgence has stripped away distraction as well. You feel closer to the mountain silence, closer to the stillness that endures beyond flesh. At times you wonder if you're dissolving into that silence, if piece by piece you're becoming less a man than a vessel. Yet doubt lingers, faint but persistent. In the moments when your body shakes from weakness, when your hands tremble too much to hold the brush steady while copying sutras, you wonder if devotion is truly measured by deprivation, or if you're only hastening decay. But each time doubt rises, the memory of your vow returns, firm as stone. You remember bowing before the elders, declaring aloud that you would cast aside even what little remained of comfort. You remind yourself that eternity is not reached through softness, but through surrender. The vow is not a choice to be reconsidered, but a path that admits no turning back. Over time, the austerity ceases to feel like an affliction and becomes instead a constant companion. You come to recognize the cold as a presence rather than an enemy, the hunger as a rhythm rather than a torment. They no longer strike you as intrusions upon life, but as the shape of life itself. When you kneel in meditation, when the hall fills with the low drone of sutras, you feel that your voice is not your own, but belongs to something that endures beyond weakness, beyond flesh. You are no longer a novice imitating discipline. You are living within it. The elders speak little, but when they glance toward you during chants, when they note you're bowed back in the courtyard, you sense that your vows have been accepted, not because they are impressed, but because you have proven that silence and austerity can inhabit you as fully as breath. No reward is given, no blessing offered, because none is needed. The vow itself is its own reward, its own proof. You understand now that to cling to comfort is to cling to illusion, and to strip it away is to step closer to what endures. At last, when you bow before the shrine in the dim light of evening, you know you have crossed the threshold. The first vows are not a destination, but an opening, a narrowing of the path that leaves no return. Hunger presses on you, cold wraps around you, but you no longer resist them. You accept them as the beginning of your way. In that acceptance, you feel the silence of the mountain settle deeper around you, and you understand that the true path of endurance has only just begun. It is not enough simply to eat little. Your vow demands that you live only on what the mountain itself provides, without cultivation, without comfort, without the grains and vegetables that softened life even within the monastery. You step into the practice of Mokuji Kigyo, the tree-eating discipline, and with it, you turn fully from sustenance to survival. What enters your bowl now is pine bark, stripped in fibrous curls from the trees, bitter and sharp on the tongue. You chew pine needles until your jaw aches, their resin coating your teeth in a taste that clings no matter how much water you drink. Roots dug from frozen soil, acorns cracked open, wild nuts gnawed raw. All of these become your diet. They fill the belly in shape, if not in substance, passing through you with little nourishment, leaving behind only the hollow echo of their passing. At first, the novelty of this austerity carries you. You tell yourself that each mouthful of bark, each bitter pine needle, is a test of devotion. Your body, growing thinner by the week, feels like a vessel being emptied to make space for the sacred. The chanting grows clearer in your chest, your mind sharp with the lightness of an empty stomach. You look at your hands, skin already stretched tighter across the bones, and you tell yourself that this is purification. The weight you lose, the strength you surrender, is proof that you're not bound by the cravings of ordinary men. You walk the mountain paths with slower steps, but with each breath you remind yourself, the body is thinning so that the spirit may expand. As the months pass, the practice settles into its true rhythm, and the years begin to unfold. Your hunger no longer feels like a passing ache, but like the constant rhythm of your existence. Morning chants are interrupted by the growl of your stomach, a sound so loud you fear others will hear, though they never remark upon it. At work in the gardens, you find yourself staring at the green stalks, not as a monk tending to vegetables, but as an animal longing to eat them. Yet your vows forbid it, and you let your hands do the work while your mouth remains closed. You drink water to dull the edge, but it is never enough. The hunger clings to you, gnaws at you, and yet you endure it because to endure it is the point. Your body changes in ways you cannot ignore. Where once your robes hung with some weight, they now drape over a frame that has thinned like an old tree losing bark. Your collarbones protrude sharply, your ribs visible when you change robes in the dormitory. Your legs ache with every climb of the temple steps, muscles no longer full but stringy and weak. When you kneel for meditation, your bones press uncomfortably against the floor, and yet you do not shift, for pain itself has become instruction. Your face reflected in the polished surface of water at the spring is not the face you brought to the mountain. The cheeks have hollowed, the eyes sink deeper, the skin grows taut and yellowed. You barely recognize yourself, but you remind yourself that this is the path. Your body is not failing, it is transforming. The elders do not comfort you, but neither do they let you drift. Their silence remains steady, but their eyes notice everything. When your steps falter, when your hands shake while holding the sutra brush, they do not chastise. They allow you to struggle, because the struggle is the teaching. You come to see their silence as a mirror, reflecting back the truth that this path is not meant to be survived in comfort, but to be endured in devotion. Their very presence reminds you that weakness is not failure, so long as you do not turn back. There are nights when you wake from dreams of banquets, of steaming bowls of rice, of sweet fruit split open, their juice running down your hands. The dreams feel so vivid that for a moment you reach for food that is not there. When you open your eyes, all that meets you is the dark of the dormitory and the steady breath of your brothers. At first you feel shame for such longings, but over time you learn to let the dreams come and go like passing clouds. You do not control them, nor do you cling to them. They are simply reminders of the world you are leaving behind, the final threads loosening one by one. Your body continues to weaken, and what once shocked you now feels ordinary. To climb the mountain paths leaves you breathless, but you climb them still. To carry water jars is agony, but you do not refuse. To kneel in meditation is pain, but you hold still as long as you can. Frailty becomes normal, and in that normalization, you find a strange peace. You are no longer surprised by weakness, no longer frustrated by it. It is the state in which you live, and you accept it as the natural shape of devotion. What once seemed like decline now feels like progress, because each ounce of flesh lost is a step further from the world of desire. You no longer think of the body as your own. It has become something you tend as you might tend the fire in the hall, keeping it alight but never indulging it. When sores appear on your skin, you clean them without complaint. When your teeth loosen, you chew bark more slowly. When your hands tremble while sweeping, you rest only long enough to finish the task. You accept these signs not as warnings, but as confirmations that the vow is working, that you're becoming something other than ordinary flesh. In the mirror of water, the gaunt figure you see no longer feels like a stranger. It feels like the image of your vow itself, etched into bone and skin. By now, the diet of bark and roots has carved you down, hollowing flesh and leaving bones prominent beneath your skin. Yet the world beyond the monastery does not soften because you have grown frail. If anything, the mountain seems harsher now, that your strength is gone. The vows you hold demand endurance, but endurance is not measured in prayer alone. It is measured in the way your body meets the cold and the heat, the snow and the storm, without complaint. Each season of the mountain is a test, and none of them allow you rest. Winter arrives first, a force that does not simply brush across your skin, but cuts into it. The wind slips through your thin robes, slicing to the bone, and no blanket waits for you at night. You wake with your body stiff as stone, teeth chattering so hard they ache. Your hands split in the cold, cracked knuckles, weeping in the silence of the dormitory. To fetch water is agony. The spring's surface frozen solid, ice-crusted thick enough that it must be broken with stones before you can dip your jar. Each sip burns with cold as it travels down your throat. You walk carefully on snow-packed paths, legs unsteady, lungs burning from the sharp air. There is no relief, no extra warmth offered, because this is what you vowed to endure. The mountain gives its lessons without pity. When the cold finally loosens its grip, spring does not arrive as mercy, but as another form of trial. Meltwater soaks the ground, mud clinging to your feet as you work the gardens. New shoots rise from the soil, bright and full of life, but your vows forbid you from tasting them. The temptation is cruel. To kneel in earth, planting and weeding, hands brushing against green stalks while your stomach howls. You watch your brothers eat the vegetables you've tended, their bowls steaming with warmth, while your own portion remains bark and bitter nuts. You do not complain, but the ache gnaws at you. You remind yourself that hunger is the form your vow takes in this season, as constant as the chant that opens each day. Summer brings a different kind of cruelty. The heat settles thick over the monastery, air heavy with the buzzing of insects. Sweat dampens your thin robes, plastering fabric to skin stretched taut over bone. The work does not lessen, and your body, already weak from hunger, staggers under the weight of even the smallest task. Insects descend without mercy. Mosquitoes prick your arms and legs, their bites swelling red against your fragile skin. Flies swarm the latrines and creep over the sores that have begun to open on your body. You swat at them until your arms ache, but they always return, drawn to your weakness. Nights are no kinder, the air stifling, your body sticking to the straw mat as you shift in shallow, restless sleep. The vow allows no reprieve. Endurance must hold even when the air itself feels hostile. Autumn comes, and with it a strange cruelty of its own. The air grows crisp, the leaves turn gold and red, and the monks prepare for harvest. You join them in the fields, bent low, gathering grain, pulling roots, carrying baskets heavy with food. Your hands know the shape of abundance, but your mouth does not. You return each basket full, only to watch its contents distributed to others. Your own meals remain the same, bark stripped from pine, acorns ground bitter in the mortar, roots so fibrous they tear at your gums. You tell yourself that this is purity, that by refusing even the season's generosity, you prove the depth of your vow. Yet inside, hunger gnaws all the more sharply for being surrounded by food you cannot touch. The ache in your stomach does not diminish. It deepens with every harvest you are forbidden to taste. So the cycle turns again and again, each season carving you thinner, testing your resolve in new shapes of suffering. Winter's cold hollows your chest, leaving you gasping for breath on mountain paths. Summer's heat leaves you drenched and shivering in weakness, the sweat drying too slowly on skin cracked by sores. Autumn taunts you with abundance withheld, while spring thrusts new life before your eyes, life you are forbidden to claim. There is no refuge, no easy stretch of the year where devotion feels light. Every moment is weight, every breath a reminder that eternity demands endurance without pause. The years blur together, not because they are forgotten, but because they are all the same. You no longer mark them by events, but by the cycle of suffering. Snow melts into mud, mud hardens into summer heat, summer yields to harvest, and harvest fades again into frost. Your body has become a vessel, carried through this circle, wearing thinner with each turn. The seasons grind against you like stones, scraping away flesh and strength, leaving only the fragile frame of bone and spirit. The monks around you endure the same cycles, but you are marked by your vow, set apart by your diet and your frailty. Their faces show the strain of discipline, but yours shows the deeper hollowing of one who has embraced a narrower path. What surprises you is not the cruelty of the seasons, but your growing acceptance of them. The cold that once felt unbearable becomes expected, a sharpness you brace for rather than resist. The hunger that once left you distracted has become the background of your existence, a constant hum. Even the insects, relentless in their assaults, lose some of their power to torment when you cease to curse them. You begin to see each season not as something inflicted upon you, but as another shape of the vow you have taken. Winter is austerity, spring is temptation, summer is endurance, autumn is denial. Together they form the circle of your devotion, and you learn to walk it without resistance. Frailty becomes your new normal. To wake trembling with cold no longer surprises you. To collapse briefly while carrying water jars no longer feels like failure, only inevitability. Your body is not what it once was, but you do not think of it as failing. You think of it as being reshaped, refined, carved into something closer to purity. When you bow before the shrine, your ribs press against your skin, your breath rattles, but you tell yourself, this is progress. The body is being stripped so that the spirit may remain. Each season is another layer peeled away, another proof of endurance. The elders tell you that this is still not enough. Hunger has carved away your flesh. Cold and heat have tested your endurance. But devotion demands something greater than mere frailty. The body, they remind you, will not vanish when the breath leaves it. It will rot, it will swell, it will feed worms and be consumed by insects. Flesh clings to the world in corruption unless it is disciplined to resist decay. And so, when the time comes, you are given a bowl of tea that is not meant to nourish you, but to destroy you from within. The elders call it purification. You know it as poison. The urushi sap is drawn from the lacquer tree, the same tree that provides the resin to coat bowls and boxes, the same lacquer that hardens into a glossy black shell when brushed upon wood. Steeped into boiling water, it becomes a bitter brew, thick and acrid, with fumes that sting your eyes before you even raise it to your lips. The first sip sears your tongue, leaving behind a coating that feels as if it might peel away the flesh itself. The taste is sharp and lingering, clinging to your throat no matter how much you swallow afterward. Your stomach churns violently, a heat spreading through your chest and bowels. Yet this is the point. The tea is not meant to comfort, but to corrupt the body so completely that even parasites and worms will refuse to touch it when you're gone. The first days of drinking it are torment. Your belly knots within minutes, cramps twisting your insides so tightly you double over in pain. Sweat breaks across your skin, cold and clammy, though the room itself is not cold. You stagger through your duties, clutching your stomach, mouth bitter with the taste of sap. At night, you lie on your mat, restless, bowels rumbling, the urge to retch rising again and again. Your body wants desperately to reject what you have given it, but you force it down day after day. Each swallow is agony, and each agony is endured in silence, because devotion demands it. The stench that clings to you becomes its own form of trial. The urushi leaves a sour, acrid odour that no washing removes. Your sweat carries it, your breath exhales it, and you can smell yourself, wherever you go. It hangs about you like smoke, unsettling even your brothers in the dormitory. They shift away subtly, their eyes not unkind but cautious, as though your very presence is already that of one set apart, one marked for something beyond human. At first this isolation stings, but over time you begin to see it as confirmation. If your flesh is becoming unfit for ordinary company, perhaps it is becoming suitable for the eternity you seek. Hunger does not leave you, but now it has changed shape. It is no longer only the ache of emptiness, but the nausea of corruption. Food, when it comes, tastes strange upon your tongue, tinged by the bitterness that the tea has stained into your mouth. You chew bark and roots, but their flavours are muted beneath the acrid residue that coats everything. At times, even water seems fouled by it, carrying the faint sting of lacquer. Yet still you swallow, still you endure, because each sip of poison is another step toward incorruptibility. To resist is not only to dishonour your vow, but to condemn yourself to ordinary decay. Meditation becomes more difficult now, not because the discipline has faltered, but because the body itself is a storm of distraction. Kneeling cross-legged, you feel the tremor of your legs, the ache of your gut, the constant sour taste of poison rising into your throat. Yet the practice demands that you remain still, that you accept these torments without fleeing them. And in time you discover that even this is possible. Pain does not lessen, but you learn to sit within it, to let it exist without reaction. In the stillness of the hall, surrounded by chanting voices, you begin to realize that the poison is not simply hollowing your body, it is hollowing yourself, peeling away the last layers of resistance. Over the years, the tea reshapes you completely. The poison no longer feels like something you drink. It feels like something you are. It has seeped into every corner of your flesh, lodging in your marrow, staining your skin, reshaping you from within. At first you told yourself that the bitterness was a lesson, that the cramps and sores were temporary. But now, the changes have grown too visible, too undeniable to dismiss as passing discomfort. Your reflection in the water is not simply thinner or weaker than before. It is transformed into something that looks more corpse than man, and yet you continue, because to stop would mean your suffering was for nothing. The first sign you cannot ignore is your hair. What hunger had thinned, the poison now uproots entirely. It comes away in clumps each morning, left behind on your pillow or caught in the folds of your robes. When you sweep the dormitory floor, strands cling to the broom, brittle and dark, breaking apart between your fingers. Soon your scalp grows patchy, then bare, as though the poison has stripped away even the vanity of hair. Your eyebrows thin, your lashes shed, until the face in the water looks strange and raw, as though it has been scrubbed down to a mask. You bow before the shrine with this face, exposed and hollow, telling yourself that even this loss is purification. Your teeth follow next. They loosen in your gums, one after another, wobbly as though they belong to a child's mouth instead of your own. Chewing bark becomes agony, the fibres tearing at inflamed roots until you bleed into every meal. When at last a tooth falls free, you roll it between your fingers, tiny and pale, astonished at how small it seems. You leave it on the windowsill of your cell, a quiet marker of your progress, before another loosens and another. In time, chewing becomes little more than gumming bitter pulp, each swallow scraping raw tissue down your throat. You tell yourself that food was never meant to nourish but to test, and the loss of teeth is only proof that the body is yielding, just as the vow intended. Your nails blacken at their roots, dark stains spreading beneath the brittle keratin. They crack down the middle, splintering into jagged edges that catch against fabric and tear away from flesh. Each small task, carrying water, sweeping stone, becomes a trial of pain as nails lift and peel. Some fall off entirely, leaving behind raw red beds that weep when touched. The sight of your own hands unsettles you. They no longer resemble the tools of a living man, but something closer to claws, half decayed and unfit for ordinary use. And yet, when you bow in prayer, when you press these hands together in devotion, you remind yourself that this too is purification, that beauty was never the point. Sores open across your body, small at first, then spreading. They blossom in damp folds of skin, at the corners of your mouth, beneath your ribs where the robes chafe. They weep and crust, the discharge sour and acrid, staining your robes. The stench has grown worse no matter how carefully you wash in cold spring water. Other monks notice but do not speak. They glance at you in the hall, nostrils flaring, eyes cautious, but they do not turn away outright. Their silence is sharper than words. You are marked as one set apart, one chosen for a path that disgusts the body but sanctifies the spirit. You tell yourself that shame has no place here, that the stench is not failure but proof of transformation. Your bowels suffer most. They bleed without warning, staining your robes with dark smears you struggle to scrub clean in secret. Each movement tears at fragile tissue, leaving you weak and trembling. The pain radiates upward into your stomach, twisting your gut until you double over in the courtyard, clutching at your midsection, sweat dripping from your nose into the dirt. The cramps do not pass quickly, but stretch on for hours, waves of torment that leave you dizzy and drained. Sometimes blood alone passes, and you wonder if the poison is hollowing you out entirely, carving away the last remnants of life. Yet even in this, you remind yourself of the vow. The body must be emptied if it is to be incorruptible. Every movement now feels like an ordeal. Climbing the temple steps leaves you gasping, your vision swimming with black spots. Carrying a bucket of water feels as heavy as carrying a stone altar. Sweeping a courtyard makes your arms tremble, the broom slipping in your brittle fingers. Your body tears against itself with each act, muscles refusing commands, joints grinding, sores splitting open with every stretch of fabric. The simplest tasks that once filled your days without thought now feel monumental, and yet you force yourself to complete them, because each task is not about labour, but about obedience, about showing that devotion can inhabit even a collapsing frame. Meditation is no longer stillness, but battle. To kneel cross-legged is to endure cramps that tighten your gut until you taste bile in your throat. To sit with your spine straight is to feel sores press against the floor, bursting slowly beneath your weight. To breathe evenly is to drag air into lungs that rattle with phlegm. Yet you remain, hour after hour, refusing to shift, refusing to break. You close your eyes and let the pain consume you, refusing to resist it, telling yourself that pain itself is the fire that will burn away the last impurities. When chanting begins around you, your voice emerges ragged, broken by coughs, but still you chant, each syllable scraping its way up your ruined throat. At night, when you lie on your mat, sleep does not come easily. Your body pulses with pain, sores throbbing, stomach churning, bowels threatening to betray you. You turn on your side to ease one ache, only to expose another. Dreams, when they come, are feverish and strange. Visions of fire consuming flesh, of insects crawling over you only to recoil, of your body breaking apart piece by piece. You wake soaked in sweat, hairless scalp slick, robes damp and stained. Yet even in those moments of weakness, you whisper sutras to yourself, forcing the words past cracked lips, reminding yourself that suffering is the path. The elders do not intervene. They watch you steadily, their faces unreadable as you drag yourself through duties, as your body falters under the weight of its own collapse. They offer no comfort, no medicine, no reprieve. Their silence tells you what you already know. To heal would be to betray the vow. To stop the poison would be to cling to the world. You see their eyes linger on you, and you understand that they measure not your strength but your endurance. The suffering itself is the practice, the pain itself the purification. Time loses meaning in this state. Days blur into nights, seasons into cycles of agony. You no longer measure your life by events but by the rhythm of pain. Each morning begins with the taste of poison, each day with the ache of hunger, each night with the weeping of sores. The body you inhabit feels less and less like your own, more like a husk being carved down to its final shape. You tell yourself that this hollowing is necessary, that every strip of skin, every tooth lost, every nail blackened, every sore opened, is part of the path to incorruptibility. And so, when you bow before the shrine, trembling and bent, ribs pressing sharply beneath parchment skin, you do not think of yourself as broken. You think of yourself as purified. The body has been reduced to near nothing, and yet you remain, clinging to the chant, to the vow, to the silence of the mountain. The pain leaves you hollow, but you embrace the hollowness as space for eternity to enter. It is all that keeps you moving forward, all that keeps you lifting the bowl of bitter tea to your lips, all that keeps you believing that transcendence lies just beyond the agony. Eventually, the body that carried you to the mountain begins to yield in earnest. There is no strength left to disguise the truth. Your frame no longer appears merely thin but skeletal, bones jutting sharply beneath the folds of your robes. When you kneel, your knees grind against the floor, as if stone pressed directly against stone. Your skin, stretched too tightly over this structure, begins to split at its seams. Cracks open along your lips, your knuckles, even your shins where the fabric rubs. The flesh that once healed from minor wounds now resists repair, leaving every crack to linger as a permanent mark. Breathing itself feels laboured, each inhalation shallow and uneven, as though your ribs resent the effort of rising and falling. Every task that once marked the rhythm of life in the monastery grows monumental. To climb the temple steps is no longer a simple act of duty, but a trial that leaves you trembling and gasping at the top, chest rattling as though hollow reeds try to carry breath. The sweep of a broom feels like hauling a tree trunk, your arms weak and unsteady, fingers raw from splitting nails. Carrying a jar of water is a danger in itself, the weight swaying in your brittle hands until you fear you will topple and shatter on the stones. Each act that once felt like service to discipline now feels like survival itself, measured in gasps and pauses rather than devotion and ease. Chanting, which once carried you beyond yourself, now threatens to undo you. The sutras rise from your throat ragged, broken by coughs, the words faltering halfway through. At times you can manage only to mouth the syllables, your voice reduced to a dry rasp. The breath required to sustain the chants seems too costly, your lungs unwilling to bear the strain. Yet you remain among your brothers in the hall, lips moving, eyes closed, ribs lifting shallowly. You tell yourself that even silence, so long as it is joined to intention, carries the vow. Still, the absence of your own voice wounds you, for you once believed the chant itself was proof of strength. Now it is only the will to remain seated that proves anything at all. Sleep offers no restoration. You lie on your mat, body stiff and trembling, every sore pulsing, every joint aching. The cold enters without resistance, sinking deep into bones stripped of flesh. You shift from side to side in search of comfort, but there is none left to be found. The straw beneath you scratches against wounds, while your ribs press against the floor so sharply it feels as though you're lying directly on stone. When sleep does come, it is fractured, broken by coughing fits, by cramps, by the damp chill that seeps through your robes. You wake each morning not renewed, but already exhausted. Another day of endurance beginning before the bell even rings. The stench of your body has grown heavier with the collapse. It clings to your robes, sour and acrid, impossible to wash away. The sores that weep do so without pause, staining fabric that can no longer be fully cleaned. When you move among your brothers, their silence deepens. They step aside for you without word, their eyes sliding over your frame. There is no cruelty in their avoidance, but a recognition that you have already drifted beyond their company. You are no longer like them, not because of choice alone, but because your body has been remade into something both living and not. You feel this distance with each step, the quiet isolation that comes not from exile, but from transformation. Your hands, once capable of delicate tasks like copying sutras, now tremble too much to hold a brush steady. The ink splatters, strokes crooked, characters incomplete. You bow your head over each ruined sheet, forcing yourself to try again, though you know your body will not obey. The act of writing becomes not about beauty or clarity, but about persistence, the stubborn attempt to continue despite collapse. When you present your work smudged and broken, no elder rebukes you. They accept the offering as it is because it's not ink they measure, but endurance. The vow has shifted. It is no longer about precision, but about not surrendering, even when surrender seems inevitable. The mountain paths, once difficult, now feel insurmountable. To walk even the short distance to fetch water leaves your legs quivering, your vision swimming. You lean on stones as you climb, pressing your shoulder against the cold surface, pausing again and again to gather enough strength to move forward. Each step is a victory, though it no longer feels like progress. When you reach the spring, you kneel not with reverence, but because your body has buckled. The water is icy against your trembling hands, splashing against sores, making you wince. You drink in shallow gulps, careful not to overfill the hollow stomach that rebels against anything too sudden. The return journey feels longer than the climb, and you tell yourself that each stagger forward is another step away from the world of comfort, another proof of devotion. Meditation narrows into endurance. The stillness that once freed your mind now chains you to pain. Kneeling, you feel your joints grind as though bone pressed bone without cushion. The sores on your thighs burst slowly under your weight, sticky warmth seeping into your robes. Your breath, meant to be even and calm, rattles in your chest, lungs burning with every inhale. Yet you do not rise. You refuse to move, even as your body screams for release. Hours pass like this, your thoughts dissolving into waves of pain, your mind retreating further and further inward until nothing remains but the decision not to stand. You begin to see that meditation is no longer about clarity or vision. It is about surviving the collapse without abandoning the posture of devotion. There are moments when your vision dims, when the edges of the world blur as though mist has filled the hall. At first you fear you're fainting, that your body will give way completely, but then you realize that these moments are simply another stage of the collapse. The body does not fail all at once, it frays piece by piece. You lean into the dimness, accepting it as another form of stripping away. There comes a day when collapse no longer measures your progress, but signals its conclusion. The elders, who have watched silently for years as your body thinned and split, decide you're ready. Their word is not dramatic. It is spoken with the same calm tone they use for every instruction, yet you feel the weight of it in your bones. The vow you have carried in hunger and poison now leads you to the narrowest path of all. You will not walk it in the open air of the mountain, nor in the company of your brothers. You will take it within stone walls, in a chamber where the world will cease to reach you. When you hear the summons, your frame trembles, though not from doubt. It trembles because this is the step you have been moving towards since you first bowed at the monastery gates. The chamber is small, barely wide enough for a man to sit cross-legged. Its walls are rough stone, cold to the touch, sweating with the dampness of the mountain. You are led there slowly, your arms supported by younger monks, your legs dragging across the stones. The walk is short, but your body, wasted by years of austerity, makes it feel endless. At the threshold, you bow with difficulty, forehead touching the cool ground. When you rise again, it is with effort, your breath ragged, your skin pale. The monks guide you inside and settle you upon a low platform carved from the floor. You fold your legs beneath you, bones creaking, joints grinding, but you do not move from the position. This will be your posture until the end. They place beside you a thin tube of bamboo, its end leading upward through the stones. It will bring you air, though even that will grow stale as days pass. You're also given a small bell, set just within reach of your frail hand. Each day, you will ring it once to signal that you're still present, still meditating, still devoted. When the bell ceases, the monks will know you have departed. This simple arrangement, air and sound, will be your link to the world beyond the stones. They are not meant to comfort you. They are meant to mark your passage from flesh to eternity. The chamber smells of earth and stone, a heavy dampness that seeps into your nostrils. The air feels cooler here, pressing against your skin, clinging to the sores that never healed. Shadows cling in the corners, even with the daylight filtering faintly down the bamboo tube. You close your eyes against them, reminding yourself that sight is no longer needed. The chamber is not meant to be seen, but to be endured. You settle your hands upon your knees, your spine bowed but steady, and you begin to breathe as you have in meditation, countless times before. The rhythm is thin, shallow, rattling in your chest, but it is steady enough. The monks outside begin their chant, low voices rising as they start the ritual. You hear them faintly through the stones, the syllables distorted as though carried from a great distance. Their voices do not comfort you. They remind you that you are no longer among them. Their chant is for you, but not with you. When the final notes fade, silence fills the chamber. You are left alone with your breath, your heart, and the faint echo of stone pressing close. You lift your hand with effort and strike the bell. Its sound is sharp in the small space, echoing off the walls, filling your ears. For a moment it seems too loud, almost unbearable, but then it fades into silence again, leaving only the memory of its ringing. Your first hours in the chamber are consumed by the body's protests. Your knees ache under the strain of being folded, your back burns, your sores stick to your robes. You shift slightly to ease the pain, but you know that soon movement will be impossible. Already the air feels heavier, the dampness clinging to your lungs. You breathe shallowly, each inhale a labour, yet you remind yourself that discomfort is the point. This space is meant to strip you of the last ties to ease, to leave you with nothing but the vow. You whisper sutras under your breath, the sound cracked and rasping, but the words carry weight in the silence. They remind you of what this chamber means. It is not a tomb, not yet. It is a final place of meditation, where your spirit will separate from what is left of your flesh. As the hours pass, you begin to lose sense of time. The chamber does not change. Light does not enter, except as the faintest suggestion through the bamboo tube. Shadows remain the same, air heavy and unmoving. You mark the day only by the single ringing of the bell, the single strike that tells the monks, outside you remain. Each time you lift your hand, it trembles so much you wonder if you will miss the mark, if the bell will not sound. Yet the chime always comes, sharp and clear, echoing off the stones. It is your voice now, your chant, your proof. You cling to its sound, even after it fades, as though it holds you against the silence. In meditation, pain becomes your companion more intimately than ever before. Your legs swell with numbness, your ankles twist, your spine curves, sores split further under the pressure of stillness, moisture soaking through your robes. Your breath grows shorter, the air thick, your chest rattling with every attempt. The bamboo tube delivers air, but not relief. You begin to taste the dampness of stone with every inhale, as though the mountain itself presses into your lungs. Still you keep your posture. Still you murmur the sutras between gasps. You tell yourself that each pain is not hindrance, but purification, that each breath is another step toward the silence that waits beyond. The first mornings are a cycle you can still trace. You wake in darkness, limbs stiff and swollen from immobility, mouth coated with the sour taste of poison and stale air. You shift only enough to draw breath more easily, then begin the sutras, whispering until your throat burns. When your voice fails, you reach for the bell and strike it once, letting the sound declare your presence. It rings sharp and steady, proof that you're still here. You imagine the monks outside listening, their heads inclined toward the bamboo tube, noting the sound, then moving on in silence. Afterward, you lapse again into breath and stillness, the rest of the day dissolving into pain, waiting, and the thick press of air. Soon time itself becomes unreliable. The chamber gives you nothing by which to measure hours. The air, heavy from the first moment, only thickens slowly until it feels as though it has never been fresh. You try to mark the day by chanting, by focusing on your breath, but you cannot tell whether your recitations match the rising and falling of the sun or drift far from it. The bell becomes your only anchor. Each strike is a promise that another cycle has passed. Each chime is the shape of a day, the proof that you have endured at least until this moment. As days stretch, your body begins to betray you more fiercely. The dampness clings to your lungs, leaving you coughing into your sleeve, the sound loud and hollow in the enclosed space. Your sores fester where your skin presses against the stone, weeping slowly until the fabric of your robe stiffens with discharge. The cracks along your lips deepen, and when you whisper sutras, blood stains your tongue. Your hand shakes so violently when you reach for the bell that it takes 2 or 3 attempts to make it ring. Still, you persist, because the sound is your voice now. To let it fall silent would be to surrender before the vow has claimed you entirely. The air grows staler with each passing day. It tastes of earth and mildew, a heaviness that makes your chest ache. You breathe shallowly, trying not to use what little oxygen trickles down the tube, yet each gasp feels less satisfying than the one before. You begin to hear your own heartbeat echoing in your ears, pounding when you move your arm, slowing when you settle into stillness. The walls feel closer now, pressing inward, though you know they have not shifted. The weight of the stones above you seems to sink into your shoulders, into your chest, as if the mountain itself has decided to share its burden. You cannot escape it. You can only sit within it, chanting between gasps, the words breaking more often now, interrupted by coughs and silence. Dreams blur with waking. You close your eyes and see visions of fields and rivers, of faces you can no longer name, of food you can no longer taste. When you open them, nothing has changed. Stone, darkness, and the faint gleam of the bamboo shaft. You cannot tell whether you have slept or simply drifted into a haze. Time fractures this way, breaking into fragments that no longer align. You cling to the bell more than ever, the sound of it convincing you that the days still exist, even when your body insists. They have collapsed into one long, unbroken silence. Pain sharpens in new ways as you remain seated. Your legs, long since numb, now pulse with stabbing cramps that leave you shaking. Your spine bows despite your effort to keep it straight, joints grinding against each other. Your head droops forward, too heavy to hold, your chin pressing against your chest until you force it upright again. Every movement tears at fragile flesh, but still you resist the urge to shift, To move would be to admit weakness, and weakness is not what you came here to preserve. You tell yourself that stillness is devotion, that each moment endured without movement is a prayer louder than your faltering voice. Your sutras become fainter each day. At first you could still whisper the full chants, voice rasping but steady enough to carry through the long hours. Now only fragments emerge, syllables cracked and broken, words cut off by coughing, or breath too shallow to sustain them. Sometimes all you can manage is to mouth the shapes of the words, without sound. You tell yourself that intention is enough, that the gods can read silence as well as sound. Yet each time your voice fails, you feel the weight of loss, as though another part of yourself has slipped away into the stone. The bell grows more important with each faltering chant, its clear tone a substitute for the voice that no longer rises from your chest. When you strike the bell now, the effort itself feels monumental. The sound is weaker, as though even the metal has grown tired of endurance, but it still rings. Each chime feels like the last thread, tying you to the world outside, and you hold your breath afterward, listening, clinging to the fading echo, as though it could sustain you. The monks outside hear it, though you cannot see their reaction. You imagine them pausing, tilting their heads to catch the faint strike. You imagine their nod, their silent acknowledgement that you remain. They do not speak to you, they do not reply, but their listening is enough. The ritual depends on their vigilance as much as on your endurance. Together, though separated by stone, you and they sustain the vow. Yet you know that when the bell falters, their patience will not intervene. They will only know, and then they will leave you to silence. Each day the strike grows fainter. Your hand barely rises now, fingers brittle, arms too thin to lift without trembling. You tell yourself that even the weakest sound is enough, that the gods do not measure the strength of the tone, but the persistence of the effort. Still, you hear the difference. Where once the bell sang loudly, its tone filling the chamber, now it hums weakly, fading quickly into the walls. You strain your ears to hear it, as though it might vanish altogether before reaching you. The bell is your last chant, your last proof, and it is slipping away with every strike. Hunger, once a steady companion, has sharpened into delirium. You dream of food so vividly that your mouth waters, only to wake to the taste of poison, still lingering at the back of your throat. You imagine bowls of steaming rice, fish roasted over flames, fruits heavy with juice. The visions come not only in sleep but in waking, filling the chamber with scents and shapes that cannot be real. You reach for them, hands trembling, only to close on emptiness. Each hallucination cuts deeper, reminding you that the body you once disciplined has become a hollow shell ruled by craving. You try to turn the visions into lessons, telling yourself they are illusions meant to be overcome, but the ache in your gut does not listen. Thirst is crueler still. The damp air coats your tongue, but does nothing to quench it. Your lips chap until they bleed. Your throat scorches with every swallow. You dream of rivers rushing, of cold springs flowing, of rain falling through the mountains. You lick your cracked lips, tasting only iron from your own blood. Even the stale dampness of the chamber begins to feel like mockery. Each gasp for breath becomes a plea for water, and none comes. Devotion weakens under thirst in a way hunger never managed. You feel the vow itself trembling as your body cries out for relief that will not come. Darkness crowds your vision more often now. It begins at the edges, a blur that creeps inward until the chamber itself seems to collapse around you. Sometimes you faint, waking slumped against the stone, the bell lying just beyond your reach. Other times the darkness surges even while you remain upright, turning the chamber into a swirl of shadows that leave you uncertain whether your eyes are open or closed. You learn not to resist it. You let the dark come, telling yourself that it is only another form of silence, another stage of purification. Yet deep down, you know what it means. The body is shutting down. Sight is being taken before breath, leaving you with less and less of the world to endure. Delirium begins to replace meditation. You sit cross-legged as always, but your thoughts scatter into fragments. Sometimes you imagine voices in the chamber, whispers curling through the stone, though you know no one is there. You see faces that cannot be real, shadows shifting like figures crouching at the edges. At times you believe you are back in the monastery hall, chanting among your brothers, only to blink and find yourself alone in the dark. The line between memory and present blurs until you can no longer be certain what has passed and what remains. In these moments, devotion feels less like clarity and more like drowning, your spirit clawing for something solid to hold. Pain, too, has shifted into delirium. Where once it was sharp and instructive, now it is diffuse, clouding every part of you until you cannot distinguish one wound from another. Your sores weep constantly. Your joints grind when you shift. Your stomach twists with cramps, but the sensations bleed together into a single haze. You cannot focus on them long enough to name them. They simply exist, an ocean in which you float, too weak to swim. You whisper sutras still, though they come out as slurred syllables, more breath than sound. The vow remains, but it flickers like a flame at the edge of extinguishing. The day arrives quietly, though for you it does not feel like a day at all. Time has collapsed into fragments of breath and shadow, and you cannot say how long you have sat in this chamber. Your hand lies against the stone floor, trembling faintly, the bell just beyond your reach. You stare at it through blurred vision, willing your fingers to close around it, to lift it, to strike once more. But your arm does not move. The muscles spasm weakly, then fall still. The chamber waits, expectant, but the sound never comes. For the first time since you entered, the silence is not broken by the bell. Outside, the monks listen. They have gathered as they always do, their ears turned toward the bamboo tube, waiting for the faint strike that proves your presence. They wait longer than usual, heads inclined, eyes steady, but no sound drifts upward from the darkness. The absence is confirmation enough. They do not call your name. They do not knock upon the stones. The practice demands no interruption, no pleading for what has already been surrendered. They exchange glances, then bow their heads. You have passed beyond the point where ritual requires proof. The silence has spoken for you. Within the chamber, you are not aware of their decision. You feel only the weight of stillness pressing in, heavier than stone. Your breath rattles shallowly, chest heaving in irregular fits, but you lack the strength to steady it. Each inhale feels stolen, each exhale torn from your throat. The bamboo tube still delivers air, but you taste only damp stone, the flavour of mildew and earth coating your tongue. Your eyes close against the dimness, and the darkness within your skull feels no different from the chamber around you. You drift, neither awake nor asleep, suspended in the absence of sound. Then with deliberate hands, the monks pull the bamboo tube free. You do not hear them, not clearly. At first there is only a faint scrape, then the hollow thud as it withdraws. The air in the chamber shifts, the faint draught gone, leaving behind only the stagnant heaviness. Your lungs seize, searching for relief that will not come. The silence deepens. Outside, the monks set the tube aside, and with it your last connection to the world vanishes. Stones are lowered across the opening, the sound muffled but undeniable. You hear them faintly, distant grinds and thuds that vibrate through the chamber. Each stone blocks a little more of the light, a little more of the air until neither can reach you. You do not open your eyes. It would make no difference. Darkness has already become absolute. You sit cross-legged still, though your posture has collapsed inward, spine bent, head bowed against your chest. Your body trembles, then slackens, too frail to resist what presses in. Inside, the chamber grows heavier. You feel it in your chest, in your limbs, in the air that will not come. Each breath is shallow. Your throat cracked and raw, your chest scraping as though stone itself is lodged inside. The silence amplifies everything. The rasp of your lungs, the thud of your heart, the faint creak of bone as you shift. These sounds are yours alone, trapped in the stone cell, vanishing the moment they emerge. You whisper a fragment of a sutra, though no syllable forms. The breath collapses into a hiss. Even your voice has abandoned you. The monks outside do not linger. Their part of the ritual is done. They bow once more, offering prayers that you cannot hear, then return to their duties. The chamber is left alone, sealed beneath the weight of stones, hidden in the mountainside. From the courtyard, nothing has changed. The wind moves through the pines, the bell tolls faintly in the distance, the world continues as before. Only within the chamber does the silence remain, absolute and unbroken, a silence that swallows everything you are. Your awareness flickers in the dark. Sometimes you feel the press of your ribs against your skin. Sometimes you drift so far inward that you cannot tell whether you're still breathing at all. The line between body and chamber dissolves. The stone around you feels like an extension of yourself, your frame indistinguishable from the walls that confine you. You are no longer sure whether you sit within the chamber or whether the chamber sits within you. Silence erases the boundary until nothing remains but stillness. The weight of stone is not cruel, only indifferent. It presses steadily, impartially, as it has for centuries and will for centuries more. You bow beneath it, your body giving way, but the stone does not notice. It holds you in place, containing your vow, indifferent to whether you succeed or fail. The silence is not punishment. It is the nature of stone, of earth, of time itself. You feel yourself merging with that indifference, hollowed into the same endurance as the mountain. Your breath comes less often now, the pauses stretching longer, your chest heaving only after long moments of stillness. Each time you wonder if it will rise again. Each time it does, you're startled by the pain it brings. Your heart stutters, slowing until it seems to forget its rhythm. Your limbs are numb, your scalp slick, your lips cracked open. You feel the final stages of collapse moving through you. Not as violence, but as erosion, a slow surrender to the silence. Finally, your chest rises one last time before falling still. Only silence remains, thick and absolute, stretching forward without end. The chamber remains sealed long after breath has ceased. Stones hold their weight, pressing down, unchanging as the seasons turn above. Outside, life in the monastery continues in its steady rhythm. Bells toll, sutras rise, gardens attended, novices arrive and learn discipline. Elders pass into silence themselves. The mountain does not notice your absence. Winter coats its slopes with snow. Spring brings streams gushing down the ridges. Summer hums with insects. Autumn scatters leaves across the courtyards. Each cycle passes without you, the world carrying on as though you had never been. Within the chamber, the silence stretches, unbroken, year after year. The monks know how long they must wait before returning. They do not hurry. They do not disturb the stones before their appointed moment. To break the chamber too soon would be to risk undoing the purpose of your vow. And so years pass, measured not in days or hours, but in the length of devotion itself, until at last the time comes when the chamber is opened. The monks approach her quietly, their footsteps heavy on the mountain path. They chant as they walk, voices low, as though speaking too loudly might disrupt the silence of the dead. They carry with them tools to pry the stones away, brushes to sweep aside the dust, cloths and lacquer prepared for what they may find. Their faces are solemn, not because they know what awaits, but because they do not. Yours is not the first chamber to be opened, and not everyone has revealed success. Some reveal only bones scattered in decay, proof that devotion cannot always resist corruption. Some reveal nothing but the smell of rot lingering even years later, and some, a rare few, reveal a body untouched, seated still as though breath might yet stir in its chest. The stones are removed with care, each one lifted or pushed aside with the effort of several hands. Dust rises in clouds, disturbed for the first time in years, drifting in pale shafts of sunlight. The entrance gapes open slowly, revealing the chamber that has held you in darkness. The monks pause, bowing before they dare to look inside. Their chant resumes, steady and deliberate, filling the space where silence has reigned for so long. What they see depends not on your vow, not on your chanting, not even on your endurance, but on what the body has chosen to do in death. If the poison took deep enough, if hunger hollowed you sufficiently, if air and dampness did not conspire to undo the work, your body may remain seated cross-legged, skin drawn tight over bones, robes still clinging to the form they wrapped. The hollows of your eyes may gape, lips pulled thin, but the body itself remains whole, untouched by worms or decay. The monks bow deeply, tears filling their eyes, for this is the proof they sought. You have become Sokushinbutsu, a living Buddha who has crossed from flesh into eternity without corruption. If this is what they find, your body is treated not as a corpse, but as a relic. You are lifted carefully from the chamber, supported by many hands, and carried into the temple. There, the urushi lacquer you once drank is applied to your skin, brushed carefully to seal you fully against time. Gold may be laid across your features, robes freshened and placed about your frame. You are seated upon an altar, enthroned among incense and candles, your hands pressed together in eternal prayer. Monks and villagers alike come to bow before you, offering rice, coins, and sutras. Your name is spoken in reverence, carved into tablets, remembered as one who achieved the impossible. Children are brought to kneel before you, hoping to inherit your blessing. You have become not a man, but an object of worship, revered for eternity, your silence interpreted as enlightenment. But if the body has failed, if the dampness has seeped too deeply into your flesh, if the poison was not enough to keep the worms at bay, the chamber will reveal something else. The monks may recoil at the smell first, the sour tang of rot seeping from the stones. They may see robes collapsed upon themselves, bones scattered in disarray, skin sloughed away into dust. The posture may have failed, leaving you slumped or fallen, no longer recognizable as the monk who once sat cross-legged in devotion. In such a case, there is no celebration, no lacquer, no enthronement. The chamber is sealed again quickly, the remains buried quietly, the memory of your effort whispered only among those who witnessed it. There is no shame, but there is no glory either. Your name fades not out of cruelty, but because the proof of incorruptibility was not found. For those who succeed, eternity is not peace but display. The body, once filled with hunger and pain, becomes a permanent fixture of devotion. It sits for centuries while generations pass before it, incense curling upward, sutras chanted in its presence. Dust gathers on its shoulders, candles drip wax at its feet, seasons pass outside its hall. Pilgrims arrive from distant villages to see the miracle of a man who denied the flesh so fully that even death could not claim it. They bow, they pray, they weep, but the figure they revere cannot respond, cannot smile or frown, cannot speak the truths it once whispered in the darkness of the chamber. You are honoured, yes, but you are gone, erased into the shell you left behind. For those who fail, the silence is deeper still. The chamber is closed again, sealed not as a shrine, but as a grave. No visitors come, no incense burns. The vow, however sincere, is remembered only by those who lowered the stones once more. Your body returns to the earth, bones mingling with soil, spirit unmarked by relic. In time, even the memory of your attempt fades. New novices arrive at the monastery, new chants rise in the hall, and your name is spoken less and less until it vanishes altogether. The mountain keeps its silence, indifferent to whether you endured or decayed. In either fate, the truth is the same. The vow you carried, the years of hunger and poison, the pain that hollowed you, all depend not on devotion alone, but on whether the body endures. Eternity does not measure faith in the heart, but preservation in the flesh. If the skin holds, you are worshipped. If it crumbles, you are forgotten. The difference between the two is not purity, not willpower, not the strength of your sutras, but the silent alchemy of flesh and stone. The monks who opened your chamber know this. They bow deeply, whether in reverence or resignation, and then continue with their work. They understand that what matters to the living is the lesson, not the outcome. For some, the lesson is that devotion can transcend death. For others, it is that even the most devout are still bound by decay. But for you, the one who sat cross-legged in the dark, the lesson is irrelevant. You are no longer here to learn it. What remains is only what the body chose to become. And so your fate rests not in your voice, not in your vow, but in the state of what the monks uncover. The chamber is opened, the truth revealed, and your place in memory determined by flesh alone. If you are whole, you are lacquered, enthroned, and bowed before for generations. If you are dust, you are sealed away, nameless, your story swallowed by the mountain. In the end, your devotion mattered less than the stubbornness of the body, for eternity measures not intention, but what remains. You sought eternity through self-erasure, believing that by stripping away flesh and desire, you could cross a threshold that ordinary men would never reach. Each vow you carried, each season endured, each swallow of poison pressed you further from the world of comfort and closer to silence. You told yourself the pain was proof, the hunger purification, the chamber a final doorway. You gave everything, strength, voice, breath, until nothing remained but the hope that you would outlast decay. The silence stretches on, vast and indifferent, whether it surrounds a relic seated in robes or a forgotten chamber sealed in stone. Eternity came as you desired, but not as you imagined. It is not a reward, not a vision of clarity, not liberation. It is stillness, absolute and unbroken, sealed in a body that is no longer yours. And that brings us to the end of tonight's story, where a monk sought eternity through silence and self-erasure, only to discover that transcendence meant becoming a husk. Revered as a relic, but no longer human. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with another forgotten corner of history you'd like explored next. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet descents into forgotten history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S. and Rich Davis. Sleep well.